I'm not going to, I didn't ask the panel to give you formal bios because I think everybody here knows who our three panelists are. But I did ask them if they could give us one fact about them, one or two facts about them that they would like to share with the audience that the audience may not be aware of. So for Janice, Janice said that she did not speak a word of English until she was 5 years old. Now, I wasn't sure if that meant that she spoke another language at first. Okay. Or whether you were just waiting for the right time to speak.
Yeah,
okay.
I mean, everything is said. Yeah.
On a more professional level, Janice was recently the keynote speaker at the San Jose State University School of Library Science Convocation. And this was her first time as a keynoter in full rented regalia.
Yes.
Okay. Deb said that getting laid off from a job she loved was one of the best things that happened to her. It enabled her to ramp up her consulting business, focusing all her energy and time there. Now, I know Deb says she focuses all her energy on her consulting business, but I know she's got a lot more energy as she focuses on a lot of other places because she also teaches library science. She works at the reference desk at the school where she teaches. She gives lots of presentations, and she's so involved with serving SLA. And also, she's an avid tennis player. Actually, we have two tennis players on our panel tonight, because I found out at dinner time that Brent is also a tennis player.
We're going to have a tournament in San Diego. Conference.
So,
David and I are going to have a cocktail.
Brent says that you may be aware that his IRS Form 1040 tax return indicates that he is a farmer. Now, I guess in a way we're all kind of farmers of information, right? But additionally, Brent says that he used to be a blonde lifeguard. And you grew up in Kansas, right? But he's not going to show us any pictures to prove it. So, okay. So anyway, that's our panelists. So I'm going to start with the first question. I'm going to address it to Janice, and then also allow the other panelists to add their comments in. So Janice, since you recently addressed the graduating class at the School of Library and Information Science at San Jose State University, what advice did you give for those graduating students? And then for the other panelists, since you didn't address that class, what advice would you give for anyone entering the profession or considering a career in library information science?
Thank you. Thank you for taking this on. David has done an extraordinary amount of work in pulling together some really good and challenging questions for us. So I thank you, but maybe not too much. And thank you to the joint chapters, the two chapters. This is great. Look at this turnout. And I'm always happy to be here in San Francisco. And before I answer the question, I want to thank my two colleagues here to my left. Brent and Deb are giving up at least 2 days of their lives to join me at a conference that's being put on by my professional association, the American Society of Association Executives, on how to work toward having an exceptional board for your association. And that just tells you the level of commitment that they have to the association and to each one of you. And I'm just really proud to be associated with them. It is not easy to carve time out of schedules, as you know, and they both did it, and I'm just so pleased. So thank you both for that. But the students, oh my gosh, there's 2 graduates right here. It was a very exciting day. And I have to tell you, I had a great time, and I couldn't resist giving a lot of advice, unfortunately. It had been pent up for years. But here's essentially what I told them. If people who are graduating with an MLIS degree or anything related to information science and library science, I think holds the key to the economy in future years. There is so much information out there, and as you know, so much of it is incorrect, out of date, just plain wrong. And there is no way that someone like me, a lay person, someone who doesn't have this training and this skill that all of you have in this room, is going to be able to be effective in their jobs without somebody like you at their right hand, making sure that they have the right information at the right time. And I firmly believe that, and yet, on the other hand, I tried to be diplomatic, but I think we all realize that jobs in traditional brick and mortar libraries, or libraries even with 4 walls, are disappearing or at least changing. So part of the advice I gave them was to not worry too much about job titles or where they were, but in fact to think about the expertise and the talent that they have and that they've gained over these last few years, and look for places where they can be passionate, where they can care about what they do, and try to put it to work there. I also told them that they should take risks. It's not easy. A lot of people have student loans, a lot of people have mortgages, families, kids, but some of the most rewarding things that I have done in my career came because I sort of stepped out of what was the safe path or the typical path or the traditional path. So you have to be cautious and you have to know what you're doing and do a lot of analysis, but don't be afraid to take risks. And finally, my favorite was that they should try to make a difference, not just a living.
Thank you, Janice.
Well, it is my honor to be here this evening too, and I want to thank both of the chapters for giving us this opportunity to come and talk to you about what's going on in the profession, what's going on in SLA. Thank you very much to you for putting these things on questions all together as well. The question that he'd asked of myself and Deb was, what advice do we have for people considering entering the profession as well, and for those who are new to the information world out there. My first recommendation and first piece of advice I would give them is join SLA. That will be the first thing that you need to do. And after that, it's all just a wonderful trip down the career path, right? I think that's the most important thing I can tell them. In all reality, though, the networking that you do, the friends that you make, will play a huge role in your career as it moves forward. That's something that I have as a direct consequence of my relationship with SLA, is the career path that I've had, from the very first position that I got as an intern to the one now where I serve as a university librarian of a university system. And the role that my colleagues played in that world were members of SLA who helped me get to meet the right people at the right time. Whether I knew it or not at the time, it would come back to be the right people at the right time in lots of cases. So I think that this is a very exciting time to be involved in the information profession. So the Bureau of Labor Statistics tells us that those who are coming out with library degrees, or even those who don't have degrees but have the experience and are involved in the information profession, this is a good time to be involved in that world. Knowing what it is that you know is something that every company that is out there is realizing is very critical and very important to their success. So what we would call knowledge management on an internal scale is something that they're realizing is something that can be leveraged to the benefit of their organization. So we're the people out there who do that and bring those things to the light in their companies. So we have a role to play in future successes of organizations. And so to these students, I'd say go to it and power forward through SLA.
I would say ditto to that, and also I'm so glad to be in my own time zone and with my own tribe. I'm a member of both chapters, so I'm really glad to be here. It's usually we go to places where I'm it's the wrong time of day. I just wanted to say, I think to library school students or high school students that, you know, Juanita alluded to lifelong learning, and I can tell you that it never stops, but that makes it exciting, because if we didn't keep learning, it would be pretty dull, wouldn't it? And sometimes we feel like we're, you know, behind the, surfing the back of the wave. We need to be on top of that wave. And I can tell you, I've seen what I've done as my career has gone on is really sort of mirrors what's happening in our profession. I moved from doing a lot of library automation and design into enterprise content management, document management, and digital asset management, because I had clients who said, well, gosh, we can find all the stuff in our externally created content in our library, corporate library, but we can't find the stuff in our internally created content. Can you help us out? And that's how I've moved into that area. And I can tell you, tons of jobs out there. They're not called librarians. They're called all different sorts of things. DAM librarians. Sometimes, you know, there's names. I've got a few titles here: metadata librarian, information archivist, brand archivist, library partnerships manager, digital initiatives librarian, taxonomist. There are so many different terms. So don't limit yourself. We all have to really think about where we can go, what we can do, and how our skills are transferable to these other areas where there is a lot of work and a lot of opportunity. And it's ripe for us to harvest. And so that's my advice, is to get active in SLA. I would say 95% of my consulting work comes from my SLA network. And I also belong to Association of Independent Information Professionals, but most of it comes from SLA. So volunteer, network, learn new skills when you volunteer. You can't go wrong.
Okay, thank you, all the panelists. So I'm seeing already that some of these questions are going to overlap a little bit, and there may be some themes that keep coming up, but we'll go through them because I think there's some unique things anyway. One member asked, how do you see the current employment market for librarians, and have you seen or heard of any creative ways for dealing with unemployment and underemployment? And then how can librarians and information professionals assure that they will continue to remain relevant and necessary in these difficult times? And I'll address it to all three panelists, whichever one you'd like to start.
Sure, I'll go first.
I've never turned down a microphone. And it's handed to you. I know that these are tough times. They're tough times for this profession. They're tough times for a lot of professions. Yesterday, Brent and I heard a speaker talk about changes in the newspaper industry. We have an expert here with Richard, but talking about reporters and how their role is changing. I have become a big fan of someone named Anne Marie Slaughter, who used to work at the Department of State for someone I love, Mrs. Clinton. And she is at Princeton University. She did strategic planning for the State Department. And I don't really know how she got into this, but she wrote a Harvard Business Review article a couple of months ago about looking at your career in a whole new way. And this isn't going to happen tomorrow to each of you, but I think it is a mindset that all of us could adopt. I mean, I too have a degree in a field of study that I only use occasionally. I'm a lawyer. And so how do we take this? And I think the first thing is what I discussed as an answer to the first question. Look at your areas of expertise. Look at what you're good at. Look at what you think you could do very, very well for someone. Professor Slaughter then says, go find an employee. You can't get into buildings. I live in Washington. You can't get anywhere. Can't even park anywhere. You know, so that's not easy. But I think if you start shifting the way you think about your career, you'll be in much, much better shape. She also talks about how you can make these jobs happen for you if you just think beyond the job title, beyond the job description. And you know, I don't think any of us are going to get immediate results from that, but I do think that over time, if you start thinking about what you're good at and what you like to do, you'll be able to identify jobs, whether the title is librarian or info pro, or my favorite one, the SLA database has over 2,000 job titles in it. A lot of them have the word librarian, many of them don't. My favorite of the week, I sort of pick one every week. My favorite of the week is content choreographer. You know, I don't know what that person does, but God knows they sound like they love it. It sounds creative, it sounds enjoyable, and I don't think that person applied for a job in answering a newspaper ad that said, we're looking for a content choreographer. So, you know, find what you're good at and find a job that matches that. Don't worry about the job title. Don't let any of that limit you, and try to blur, you know, look at related fields, ancillary fields, find the place where you're most comfortable and you can make the best contribution.
Thank you, Janice.
Content choreographer. That could go a lot of different ways.
I know.
This particular question isn't addressed only to the student market, but I'll address it a little bit with you folks in the comments that were made earlier about paying it forward. So for those of us who are employers, one of the things that our university does, and it does not come without a lot of work and extra effort on our behalf, we provide a lot of internship opportunities. So for folks who are not employed at the moment and looking to improve skill sets, we give them real jobs to do. We don't have money to put with it, but it gives you an opportunity to build your resume up. Those who are talking, when I'm talking to students in particular who are taking these sorts of positions with our university, I say, you know, on your resume, it doesn't need to say anywhere on there that this was a volunteer position. That's not the objective. The objective is to get on your resume the skills that you have learned. Once you have an interview, the fact that it was a volunteer position can come up, you know, if that comes up in the conversation. But they're not after that. They're after what your skill set is. And we give them real things to do. So that's something that for those of us who are employers, we can do to help people at this particular time to move forward. It is not a labor unintensive operation, though. There's training that's involved and monitoring, supervising, and all of those sorts of things. If you're doing practicums for students who have coursework that's related to it, there's even more paperwork. But it's part of what we do in support of our profession and those of us who are in it who need some assistance in getting real skill sets down. So I'm going to be looking for a content choreographer sometime here in the future. I think that would be a great title that would entice an entire different sort of a mindset of people that would come to answer that job title if it even was advertised like that. So this is not exactly addressed at the same type of a thing, but in the continuation of the pay it forward kind of a theory, that's something that those of us who do have the power in us now to offer positions to people who are looking to gain some opportunities and some skills that we can help them in that regard.
Okay, I have 3 words. Invest in yourself. And this matters no matter where you are, whether you're new, whether you're getting close to retirement or somewhere in between. If we don't invest in ourselves, no one else will. It's up to us to pay our own way when that's necessary. The whole time I was at the Exportorium, I think once I got some money towards attending SLA. And as somebody who's an independent information professional, I pay my own way for professional development. I just got certified last year as an enterprise content management practitioner because I felt that gave me a little bit more, I guess, credence with those potential clients that I would have. And if we don't invest in ourselves, we're really telling ourselves and potential employers or clients that we don't believe in what we do. We really need to think about the time and the effort. And I realize that we're all at different places in our lives and in our careers. When another thing, invest in yourself time-wise, not just monetarily. I mean, do attend meetings like this, go to SLA conference, Go to other things that are happening. The Bay Area has meetup groups. There's so much going on. Take advantage of those and be active. Volunteer. Want to increase your skill set? Volunteer. Marlene's laughing. Want to get a job? Volunteer. You will increase your skill set. And when my children were little and at home, they're often married now, I did small things. I edited a newsletter. I worked on the website. I did things like that. Now I can devote a lot more time to my profession and to the associations that I belong to. And again, my consulting work, a lot of it comes from this networking and investing in myself. And for all of us, nobody's going to give us a free ride. We can't depend on others to support us if we don't believe in supporting ourselves.
Thank you to all the panelists for those great answers. So the next question, kind of ask the panel to look out a little bit further into the future, 5 years, 10 years beyond. And where do they see the library information profession going? And then specifically, how is SLA preparing its members to meet that future? Whoever would like to start first?
I'm going to start with this one. To follow up a little bit on what was said before, I think that if it's that time in your career when you happen to find yourself that things you don't have a job at the moment, that's the time when you probably need SLA the most. So this just pushing that out, investing in yourself. That's what our association is there for, to support you in your career. That's the entirety of the career. The things that we've got going on now that are new kind of initiatives, pushing the continuing education platforms that we have out there to be something that is a 365 days a year opportunity instead of only at the annual conference. We do want you to do that as well, and we want you to participate in the things that your chapter is doing on the local scale, but we're trying to push that out to further that continual learning, that lifelong learning concept into the reality of what it is that SLA is supporting. That is something that we're doing. Lots of those things are free, some of them aren't. But as Deb said, you're investing in yourself. I think that's something that SLA is doing. We'll let other people answer other things. I won't take all of the steam.
So in order for us to be sustainable as a profession and also the association to be sustainable, we need to give back to it. I have never found, when I started volunteering, I did it because I wanted to give to the organization and to my colleagues who have become my friends. But what I have found is I've gotten so much more back. And I guarantee you, if you volunteer, and you know that, you've volunteered whether it's PTA, Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, or professional associations, you always get something back. And I promise that that will happen, and it's the most amazing thing.
Well, let me talk a little specifically. I sort of touched on this, this notion about the profession blurring. And I do think that over time, you'll find yourselves being aligned or working with people in corporate strategy, people who analyze social media, those dreaded people in IT. We won't talk about them, but they're there and they're not going anywhere. People in market research, so it's a very, I think the profession is changing dramatically, and it's changing fast, but it's changing in some incredibly exciting ways, and you're ready for it. But just in case you're not, let me tell you a little bit about what SLA offers. First of all, several people, including Juanita and Deb, and Brent actually have been very eloquent about being a volunteer within SLA. I don't know why everyone doesn't do it. This is the most nurturing environment where people are, yeah, thank you. That you could ever find. These are friends, these are colleagues. If you've never handled money and someone at work is saying you ought to, be in charge of a section of the budget or something, volunteer to be a treasurer for a unit or one of the chapters. There's so much opportunity to learn here. So, that's part of continuing education as well. But think about what it is you can get out of maybe giving a little bit more of your time to SLA. We're also offering webinars, more than ever. And I love it. Our units have gotten in the game as well. And so there is a tremendous amount of mostly free education on the SLA airwaves. I mean, I've never seen anything like it. They just keep coming. They're highly rated. We had for a couple of years now, because the economy was tough, we had a license with GoToMeeting that had a limit of 100 people. And what we would do if we would hit that 100 is we would ask the presenter if they would do it again. And so that worked for a while, but no more. So we've expanded our license to 500. And there was one last week that had 369 people on it. So keep an eye on the website and see what's available. You can do it sitting at your desk. You don't have to ask for time off. You don't have to travel anywhere. It's all right there for you. We also have certificate programs that, again, over the last couple of years with the economy being in its slump, kind of had a little dip in popularity. Dale Stanley is very involved in one on knowledge management. And we actually suspended that at one point because there were only a few registrants. Well, we're going to start that one back up. And the numbers are already anticipated to exceed what we had done before. So there's a huge demand. Our certificate in copyright management registration is up by 60%. And always, with Dale in knowledge management and the copyright instructor, always get extraordinarily high ratings. These are great ways for you all to learn among your peers where you kind of don't have to stick your neck out, and you've got people that you know teaching you and helping you, and you know that if you email Dale after class one day, online with a question, he'll get back to you. So this is just a great environment that we have put together. We also, and this is all thanks to you all. This is thanks to SLA members. But we are out there with this message about professional development, about developments in the profession, in your careers, in social media. And you all have done that. You've retweeted LinkedIn, Facebook, everything. And we try to manage and help with some of that at headquarters, but it really comes down to all of you. And then finally, we have this incredible face-to-face opportunity. So, Chicago, come on, that's an awesome city. Okay, it's not as cool as San Francisco. Still, it's really a great place, and who cares? Because look who you'll be with. My thing is, I'll go. The Kentucky chapter has their conferences at state parks. You think that's glamorous? I was just there with them. It doesn't matter because they're there with their colleagues, their friends, they're learning, they have great sessions. So really take advantage of all of these opportunities that we have for you, and you'll be ready. Yeah.
One of the things we have from the board's perspective here, we talked about the professional development opportunities that are out there in the units. Something that the board has charged the professional development committee to work on during this first half of the year. When they're really not doing an awful lot as a committee. Most of their work begins in the fall as they prepare for the next annual conference. So this year we're working with the Professional Development Committee. They've been trying the SLA website and see what's happening across the association. So if you're going to be in another town, or you see what's going on, or if you're going to be looking for something to do on Thursday night when you're bored, you can see what webinars are going to be available coming from the different units, coming from the association. So a one-stop shopping sort of thing. It's very simple, it's not terribly glamorous or anything, but it should be very helpful as we move forward in pushing out our continuing education to be a year-round sort of a thing.
Yes, very good.
Okay, thank you all. I'm going to ask two more questions that are specifically about SLA, and then I'm going to open it up to the floor. The first one I'm going to address to Janice, but the other panelists can certainly chime in. How are SLA's membership numbers these days? And I've seen, because I'm on the advisory board for the San Francisco chapter, that our membership has been declining. And I'd like to know whether that's atypical or whether it's part of a larger trend. And if it's part of a larger trend, why is that happening? And do we ever survey members who dropped their membership to find out why?
Yes. Let me tell you, things are looking better, although the numbers are still going down. We were losing an incredible number of members every month over the last couple of years. That rate of decline has improved. A bit of an oxymoron there, but you get my drift. Fewer people are dropping out. The interesting thing is that there's a lot more people who are joining at the top dues level. So that says to me that last couple of years with the recession, I won't blame it on you people in Silicon Valley, but you started it. So here we are with a recession, the rise of Google, who I love. This is not a slam against them. And this perception that everything is online and it's free, so why do we have to pay someone like all of you? All of these things, it was like a perfect storm. All of these things happened at once. So people started losing their jobs, and they may have paid the $40 unemployment rate for a year, maybe two, but then, they may have gotten a different kind of job or just decided they couldn't afford it anymore. But people are coming back and they're making enough money that they can pay the very top level, which is $200 in annual dues. So there is good news there. It's not great. No one's resting on their laurels. The other part, I forgot all the parts of your question, but the other piece that I think is important is that we can do a lot at headquarters, and we do. We have people who are dedicated, the entire staff, including me, gets on the phone with lapsed members and asks them to rejoin. What we hear most often is, oh, I forgot, and I'll do it right now. So that's the good part. Or we hear our employer has stopped paying our dues, so we're not going, and we're not going to pay ourselves. And that goes to Deb's message of invest in yourself. And I'm going to be really honest, we have a structure in SLA where you don't necessarily have to be a member of SLA International. You can come to wonderful events like this and pay a non-member rate and still enjoy the networking and the collegiality. So there's a lot of things that sort of come together to make this a very thorny problem. But let me just say the bottom line, no one's going to join SLA because I ask them to, even though I do all the time. They're going to join because you ask them, because they know you, they respect you, they understand what it is you do for a living, and how you can communicate how SLA has benefited you in your careers. So this really has to be, driven down into the units, and I do hope that, I know a lot of units are good at this, and I do hope that all of you take that part very, very seriously. It doesn't have to be a hard sell, but convincing people and demonstrating what you've gotten from SLA is the best brochure I could ever create.
Thank you. Either panelists want to Okay.
If you have more questions, then I'll open it up.
I'm going to ask one more question, again, for Janice. This came from a member, and I embellished it a little bit. I understand that partnership and collaboration with other organizations is a priority in SLA's strategic agenda. To this end, how is SLA partnering with other organizations like AIM, ARMA, AAIP, ASIST, ALA, ALL, the whole alphabet soup. Do you see any of these organizations as potential competitors for SLA, and if so, which ones and why? And how does SLA address this issue? And how do the activities of these other organizations specifically impact SLA's strategic planning?
I may have to ask Phil to turn off the camera. No. You know, all of these other organizations, and I have traveled with the CEOs and executive directors of half a dozen of these. They're my personal friends. They come to my home for dinner. I go to theirs. These are all very, very good organizations who have a lot to give anyone who wants to get involved. As you know, you get what you put into it, and it's no different at SLA. You know, are they competitors? Sure, because in these tough times, and I'm going to answer that because you've asked me to run the business that is SLA. I'm not going to ask them to answer it. They have to be diplomatic. But a lot of people either aren't paying dues to anybody or are only have to choose one organization. And they're not always going to choose SLA. It could kill me. But that's the reality. So from the business perspective and from our bottom line perspective, we sort of do have to consider them as competition. But that doesn't mean that we can't work with them. And I think a lot of these organizations do a lot of work at the chapter level together with our folks, and for local programming, a lot of the local chapters are involved with each other. And that's particularly helpful in places where there aren't a lot of members of any of these organizations. I know Deb was telling me today that she went and met with our members in Indianapolis, and because of her input, they're going to try to reach out to the SLA chapter and the MLA folks. So it'll make the group more robust, more healthy, more interesting. So everybody wins. But what we've been doing, which is really kind of interesting, is we've established partnerships and close collaborations with organizations like the Software and Information Industry Association, SIIA. Thank you. And we all speak in acronyms. And that's the one where all our vendor and industry partner members belong to. And they are thrilled to have this kind of collaboration with us because they realize their business has suffered in the recession and they want to get closer to the people who make the decisions about buying resources and also their users. And they know that you all know the users better than anyone else. So that has been a good success. We also are talking with a for-profit organization about things that we could do together. And you know, we don't know exactly where that'll go, but the executive committee on the board has been extremely supportive, and I think that we have an obligation to our members to look at every opportunity. So we're going down a road that's a little bit different than what you described, David, but I think that will be a tremendous help to the profession overall. And in the meantime, a lot of the connections are being made locally. The other thing we do that people sort of forget about is we have reciprocal member registration for all our conferences. So if you decide you want to go somewhere in addition to Chicago, you could probably get a member rate with all of these groups. We do not have one with SLA, the law librarians. That's sort of a an issue that predated me, but I think next year we're going to be able to find our way to do that. So we're always trying to expand the benefits, but you know, there are lots of little ways that you can get the benefit of your colleagues in other arms of the profession.
Thank you, Janice. Do you guys want to add anything, or should I? Okay. I know we're running late, and but we started late, so we can stay after 8 if the panelists are willing to do that. And so I'd like to have at least if we can do 10 minutes or 15 minutes of questions from the audience if there are any. And if people need to leave to catch trains, certainly we all understand. Please feel free to get up and leave if you need to. So, who has a question? Anybody? Come on, somebody's got to have a question.
Should we put them to sleep? Wait, no, here we go.
Here's a simple question. How do you honestly feel about Google?
Honestly, I wish I had invested. You know, okay, again with the camera. I think Google's an extraordinary company. I have been there. I am in awe of their culture, the way that they encourage their employees to think outside the box, to expand their knowledge, their influence. I love that they give them, what is it, 15% of their time or something to work.
20.
20? Okay, I'm applying. No. You know, 20% of their time to think about new things. It's an extraordinary company. My concern is that I have hung around you guys now for 8 years, and so I know that just because I can find the time that the movie starts in my neighborhood that I want to see on Google, that, you know, I really don't want people who are the head of investment houses or banks or members of Congress or policymakers making decisions that are based on what they found on Google, unless one of you guys has said it's okay. So you've kind of spoiled me for Google. But you know, you can't argue with success, and they have been extraordinarily successful. I just wish people had a deeper understanding of what they are offering up to folks.
Yeah.
So it's up to us, to the value proposition, Google versus something else, a proprietary database, vetted data, that kind of information. There's great stuff on the open web, there really is. But again, it's up to us to inform our users and potential users of what we provide, what it's going to do, what you know, people have a full plate. And so for them, I think it's easy to go to Google, but when they get 1 million hits back and their hourly rate, if they're an attorney or something, is $250 an hour, they're going to be spinning their wheels. So we have to show the real ROI, the return on investment, if they invest in us and the tools and the talents that we bring to the table. And it's up to us to invest in ourselves and to be able to express that to our users and potential users. That's why I get hired as a consultant, because I'm able to express that to them in terms that they understand.
I think they've pretty much covered it. It's what we may think about it. I don't know if that's the right question. You know, it's what are we going to do about it? That's probably the better thing. And in the academic market, we work a lot with the students, and what I try to teach them is that, you know, I can't stop you from going to Google first to look for information. I do that myself as well. But, you know, I want you to come to me, to the library, to the professional staff next. Ahead of your roommate and your grandma and your, you know, Twitter peep friends, you know, or whatever, to look for the information that's really relevant for the question that you're asking, whatever it may happen to be. But I too congratulate them on their success. You know, I wish I had, you know, a few 100,000 shares.
Yeah, I'll split it with you.
Sandy, you had a question?
I did. I wanted to know, it's kind of hard to phrase this, but if SLA is taking any kind of a role to help shape curricula in the library schools in the future.
Start.
Okay. I hope so. We have tried this in the past, extraordinarily influential to some of the library and information school curricula, and that was our competencies document. And that is being updated this year, so there'll be a whole new set of skills and talents that will be completely up to date and will address the current economic and professional situation. We hope that people pay attention to this. It's not easy, as Jean can tell you. Program directors and deans sort of come and go. You have some who are willing to work with us. We had one library school who asked me to be on their curriculum committee. And when we stopped laughing, we realized that that probably wasn't a great idea, but I got their point that they wanted somebody to sit there and say, you can't just teach part of this. You have to teach people business skills. You have to teach people some of the more sophisticated research skills. And the dean was an extraordinary person. I did not go. We sent the information professional who works at SLA, and he went to the meeting, and he said that she was shouted down by the rest of the committee. So he never went back. Well, he wasn't invited back. So it wasn't that he decided not to go back. He wasn't invited back. So there's still a lot of work that has to be done in that area, but I do know that we have a lot of members, a lot of volunteer leaders who are adjunct professors in some of these programs, and hopefully when things have stabilized some and we've completed our recovery from the recession, we'll be able to pull some of those people together and see what we can do to influence the course offerings. I think it's critically important.
The competencies document is used in a lot of courses that deals particularly with special libraries. I can tell you now it's on a fast track. The task force that's meeting, that's updating that, meets every 2 weeks by a conference call. And I can't tell you what the final timeline is. They're really pushing forward. One of the decisions that they did make, though, was that this wasn't something that needed to be started from scratch. A lot of the things that are there in the document are very good. What needed to be updated was a lot of the language that we're talking about, how we describe the fact that we need this competency, this skill set is still there, but how it is being implemented out there in the real world where we're working is what needed to be updated and refreshed and that sort of a thing. And that's a continual process. That's always going to be something we need to do. But it's a very valuable document, and I use it in employment situations. We pull things out of there that we put word for word into job descriptions. I do recommendations for people. I'm at the point in my career where people are asking me for recommendations as they're looking for jobs elsewhere. I'll pull things right out of there as the description for what it is that best defines something that they're doing that matches something that is a skill that an employer is looking for. So it can be used in a variety of ways. That doesn't quite get at this question, but it's a very important thing that SLA, I think, is doing to support the members.
Other questions? Marley?
In the webinar today, Ann talked about, this is a webinar about our strategic vision and looking towards the future. And Ann Caputo talked about making SLA, providing more resources for senior information professionals. And I've asked for this for years because I have colleagues who are way along in their careers and they don't still see the value of SLA. It's what has SLA done for me lately. Do you have any specific courses of action other than that management track at conference that you could talk about at this point?
And we've talked about So we've talked about it, and actually that was one of the drums I beat when Ann was president, and the only reason she was on the webinar today alone was because we were tied up at this symposium and we would have all been there. Yeah, you know, it is something that is, I think we do lose membership because people feel they've done everything that they can do. And right now with funding, it's just one of those things that's right, you know, it's a top priority, but with the funding that we've got right now and with, you know, just we've had, you know, the staff has been cut by more than half at SLA headquarters, that it's something on the block, but it's something that's not coming to the forefront. I should probably have Janice talk about that.
I could. You know, one of the fallouts from the recession, Marlene, I don't know if you know the EBIC conference, European Business Information Conference, and this was always considered to be, it was by invitation only. It was always for the most senior level. I don't mean old senior, but not age, but, you know, accomplished. Monica, did you ever go to EBIC? Yeah, I thought so. They don't have it anymore. They're not doing it anymore. And what we have found is that some of the more senior people, and again, this is very informal, it's just my conversations with people who are in that role, they're using whatever development money they have for their staffs. And they're sending their staffs to SLA, which is fantastic, but it really leaves a gap, I think, with the most accomplished people who we would, I know SLA would benefit from having involved and in the fold, in addition to the ones that we already have and who just keep giving back. So we're hoping, Marlene, that we can get to that. It's something that I've wanted to do for a long time. I've not only heard it from you, I've heard it from quite a few people. I think it just, we have to be sure that there isn't going to be a double dip. We have to be sure that the economy is on the right track and that the profession, in fact, is starting to thrive again, and that you all are getting the good paying jobs and paying dues. It's our foundation. It's how we have to pay for things, but it would make me so happy to do it, and I think it's important. So it's a priority. Keep your fingers crossed, and we'll be calling you when we get started.
Thank you, Marlene. Another question?
Okay. So of course, you guys will probably know that my favorite question is usually the SWOT analysis. Yes. But in the it's a while since I've got that. You can all throw it again, but with a little twist. So to respect time, if we agree that one of SLA's weaknesses, or SLA's weaknesses include declining membership and a financial situation that's not as robust as it had been in the past. Two very substantial weaknesses. What is the one opportunity we should pursue now? Well, okay. The biggest. What are we going to do?
I think our SLA has one huge thing that we put on each year. The annual conference is a big deal. It's a big deal for the members who are able to come. It is a big deal for the association as a whole. The dues themselves do not pay what it costs to run the association. We make the money that we make from the conference supports the rest of the year. And so that's honestly, from the fiscal standpoint, something that we're looking at. This year, we invite you to come to Chicago. We hope that everyone will be there, absolutely. That has huge ramifications for the vendor community and their support of our profession as well, and of SLA. And we have some task forces that are looking at what does conference mean in the future. How does that look? If you created this from scratch now, what would it look like, as opposed to doing things the way we have been doing them? And some of us are very comfortable with what we've been doing, and we see the value and the support. But things are changing. We're putting together a task force that will look completely at that, not just changing little things, but investigating whether or not we ought to have 2 conferences a year. that are smaller and in different regions. Or maybe we should have a couple this year and a bigger one every other year. Or maybe we should have division-specific conferences around the country. Maybe there should be just virtual ones every other year. Maybe that, you know, the whole thing is up for grabs, and we're looking at not just our industry and our association for the trends that are directing that. I mean, we're putting a lot of time and energy into that analysis of what the future looks like in SLA conferencing. We're trying to make sure that we don't leave a stone that's unturned in that world. We're working with our members who also attend other conferences to see what they're doing. So we're not necessarily looking internally. We want to make sure we're covering things from a broader perspective. That's because that's so critical to the association's financial status. Just laying it on the line. I'd have to say that's the conference model, how we do what we do in that environment. If we changed it, what would that look like? How would that impact this other side of things? You know, I mean, the whole sort of thing. Not just for those of you who've done conference planning, we're not talking about just changing the number of sessions you might have or moving it from Thursday to Wednesday or whatever. That's not going to cut it anymore. And that world is changing rapidly. This is not something we can look for 5 years out. This is something we're actually looking at for after San Diego. And what will, right now we're targeted for British Columbia, Vancouver, British Columbia. What would that look like if we did things differently there? How would that impact us? So it's a very important part of this thing, and something that the board has as its #1 strategic agenda item is the annual conference.
Well, you know, as somebody who worked in a world-renowned museum for 14 years, I learned something that I had no clue about, and it's an analogy to SLA membership dues, that what we pay at the door to go to any museum never covers, even to a small percentage, the total cost of running a museum. Same thing with our membership dues. Whether you pay $40 or $200, it costs the association more like $400 to support every member. And so that is why we work with our vendors. And that's why these relationships are important. That's why conference is important. So we have to remember that you know, it's the partnerships is what it's about, and looking at new models.
You know, Tony's looking at you at the time. Is there anybody else? Any other questions from the audience? Maybe we'll take one more.
Yes, that world-renowned museum, the Exploratorium, right? What can you tell us about what you've learned there?
Well, in addition to more physics than I ever knew before I went to work there, I learned never to say no to an opportunity. I learned to see an opportunity and say, I want to work on that. And that's what I've continued to leverage in my career. And I think it's important. It's, again, this thinking outside the box, not being afraid to leap off into the future, not blindly, but preparing as much as we can, and then going, okay, I can do this. And there have been times when I've sat with a client and we've talked about some of the challenges they have, and I think, wow, that's really amazing. They've got this huge challenge. And I go, but I can do this. And we can all do that. That's the thing that I've learned more than anything, both at the Exploratorium and in my career, is it's okay to go out on a ledge. Not going to commit suicide, but I'm going to go out on that ledge and I am going to get prepared. That's part of the lifelong learning and investing in oneself.
Okay. If anybody has individual questions you'd like to ask, then they will stick around for a few minutes to questions. Thank you all.